I am sharing some amazing rustic Dollar Tree cabin and village pieces for your Christmas decor. Welcome to CreArtive by Nature DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. Dollar Tree has some new village pieces and they come pre-lit, ready to go. I am going to be covering them all with a coat of some nice smooth gesso. Now you can get this brand that I picked up from Dollarama here in Canada, but you can get one similar at Michael's, the Artist Loft brand. It is a nice smooth consistency as well. So you'll give them a coat and allow them all to dry. Now I have created a village scene out of these pieces in the past. I will have that video linked down below, and there is a cabin in there as well, but I will be getting to that next. All right, so pick out some paints in the colors that you like. I'm using warm white and I'll be using burnt umber for the roof. I am wanting to go with some vintage colors, so I thought this warm white was so fitting. On this church, I am going to be giving it 2 coats of the paint and I will allow it to dry well. For this house, I'm using this sea spray color from Decor. It's beautiful. And again, I am going to be using burnt umber for the roof. This is a gorgeous color. It really reminded me of a vintage misty minty green or blue color. I thought it was perfect. For this house, I am giving it a coat of leaf green. Now, it ended up being too dark and too bright, so in a minute here, I'll show you, I ended up lightening up this green, and all I did was mixed a bit of that warm white in with it, and it just toned it down and made it look more of a vintage color. So I'll show you that here in a minute. All right, so now I'm going to paint the roofs in the burnt umber, and I gave them all 2 coats of the burnt umber. If you don't feel like hand painting these, you can definitely spray paint as desired. All right, so here is that house. It is definitely a nice light green, and this one had some finials on the top, so I am painting those out in a silver. Okay, so the paint is all dry on all of our pieces. On this church, you can see all the beautiful texture on the roof, and I wanted to bring that to life. So I'm using some black paint and I'm going to water it down, and I'm applying this wash using a soft bristle brush. Now it's going to drip, so just be careful that you don't get it on the other part of the church. I'm just going to apply it all over the roof, then take a rag and gently dab it off. What this is going to do is just create a more distressed look, as if, you know, some mildew or mold had started to grow all over the roof. You can see in the corner there the difference between the wash that I did and then the roof without the wash. So you're gonna allow that to dry well, and I am doing the same technique on each roof. You can see the beautiful distressed look we created on the roof. All right, so before we do the next step, I'm going to give all our houses a coat of this matte varnish by Decor. I wanted to make sure that the craft paint was all sealed up. It is quite porous and it absorbs a lot of different things, so I needed to seal this before I do our next step. So I'm gonna give the entire piece a coat of this varnish and allow it to dry well. All right, it's all dry, and now I'm going to give the bottom portion of our church a coat of this walnut gel stain. Again, this is by Decor. I'm applying it using a paintbrush, and I'm making sure I'm focusing on the detailed parts. And then you'll need a rag and you'll dab it off. You can see it really gives it a nice aged look. I will be doing the same thing to all of our pieces. So all the houses are drying, and now I'm working on embellishments. I've got this wood laser cut star. It was just from my stash. I'm applying some antique gold paint to that, and then I will allow that to dry well. Next, I am going to create some mini wreaths. This is just some evergreen pipe cleaner. I got this from a local dollar store, but you can definitely pick this up at, I believe it's Hobby Lobby. And I just created a little loop around my finger, and I'm trimming out the center just to redefine the shape of a wreath. Next, I am also going to be aging some little bells that I had. Again, these were, I believe, from the thrift store actually. I am going to be using some cinnamon and some decoupage glue. I apply the decoupage glue to the bell and then apply some cinnamon on top. Now this was recommended by a viewer to create a rusted look, and I have to say it turned out really well. I'm going to be showing you this technique in another part of this video coming up here, so definitely keep watching. You do not want to miss it. It is amazing how well it worked. So here I am applying the cinnamon to the glue, and I'm allowing those to dry. Now it's time to start to decorate all our little village pieces. This church, I'm adding just a little dollar store bottle brush tree. This house, I'm adding a star and a wreath. And then for this next house, I am going to just be adding a little wreath and those cute little bells. Now with the bells, I did want to create just a little bit of a simple loopy bow. So I have this string here. I'm adding a little bit of decoupage glue to the end to make it easier to thread. Again, that was a suggestion by a viewer. Thank you very much for all these tips. I really appreciate them. So I'm just tying the bells together and then just creating a simple bow. And then I'll use my hot glue to attach those to the front. I am loving how rustic these look, but yet they still have their Victorian appeal. And I'm so happy that Dollar Tree has already added the lights in for us, and I will show you that in a moment. Here they are at dusk, and they're all lit up, and I am loving the warm glow. This is definitely a very affordable way to create a Christmas village if that is something that is on your list of to-dos. Dollar Tree has had these gingerbread house templates for a couple of years now, and I love them. People do some beautiful things with them, but I love creating cabins out of these. And so I have created one before. I'm going to again have that video linked for you down below, but people couldn't get a certain supply that was used in that particular video. So I thought I would show you another version on how to create this. So here I am just showing you how to remove any of those embellishments if you want to reuse them. Somebody again had suggested heating them up and then using a flat tool to pop them off. I have to say, these are so well glued down this year. Kudos to you, Dollar Tree. Last year, I could take them off very easily, but this year I struggled a bit. Anyways, I did manage to get them off. Now, the one piece I definitely needed for my particular cabin is this roof peak. So I popped this off of 2 of these gingerbread house templates. Now, the window parts, I am going to be doing something else, but again, if you want to use those, definitely hang on to them. But if you're not going to be using them, then don't worry about popping those off. All right, so I managed to create a little damage, but that is okay. You're actually not going to see any of that. All right, so here is the easy part. We are going to be using wood grain scrapbook paper. You'll want to have the flat side that's got no decorative elements on the house panel. You want the back side of it facing down on the back side of your scrapbook paper, and then you're going to trace it out and then cut it out once you have that all traced out. Now, what we're going to be doing is actually applying that paper to these wood panels. But first off, this is totally optional. I want to pop out the windows as I want to create a light up cabin. And to create that warm glow coming through the windows, we need to cut the windows out. So I am just tracing around where you can see right here using a pencil and ruler. I've got them all drawn out. And then on a hard surface, I am going to be using a craft knife and cutting through all the fibers, following the lines that I had created. Now, this did take me a little while. I had to apply quite a bit of pressure, but once I cut all the way through, they popped out very easily. If you decide to skip this step, then you can definitely create a faux glow by painting windows in on the surface of your scrapbook paper, or you could even use scrapbook paper to create some kind of glow. You'll just have to dig through your stash of papers to see what you have that will work. So to apply the scrapbook paper, I am using tacky glue. I really like tacky glue. I find that adheres paper really well to the surface. You just have to make sure you add enough. So I've applied it everywhere up to the edge, and then I'm smoothing it all out with a craft stick. And I'm making sure, again, I'm getting it right up to the edge. And I'm making sure I have enough applied everywhere so then I don't get any bubbles. So I'm taking my finger and I'm making sure any of the spots that didn't get glue will get the glue once I move it around with my fingers. You can see me doing that there. Working on a protected surface, you're going to want to line your scrapbook paper up on your wood panel, just like this. And then you're going to need to flip it over or smooth it all out. Make sure it's all lined up. Once it's all smoothed out and you've removed excess glue, you'll want to apply some weight to it and allow that to dry. All right, so here I decided to pop that one window back in because I decided I am going to be doing something here in a minute. And I wanted that window panel back in just so I don't accidentally cut the paper out. So I'm just using my X-Acto knife and a hard surface, and I'm just trimming out the windows. And I'm going to do that with the door as well. Next, I am going to be going around the edge and trimming off any excess that remained. So I'm going to be using these rectangular wood planks. I got mine from Dollarama, but you can get these at Dollar Tree as well. You'll need 4 of them. This is what we're going to be using to create our side panels for our cabin. So you can see I'm just making sure that 2 will be enough. If you don't have these, you can use some craft sticks. Now, Walmart, believe it or not, has these jumbo craft sticks, and I thought these would be a great alternative to build up a wall. I'm going to be using one of those jumbo craft sticks. to brace my two wood planks together in the middle, and I'll just be doing that by using some hot glue. But of course, if you'd like, you can use some wood glue or any favorite glue that you have in your stash. So we have our two panels ready to go. I'm just trimming off the end of our craft sticks with the craft knife. And I'll do that for each side on both panels. All right, so you do need a total of 3 pieces of the same scrapbook paper. So I am going to be using this to cover my side panels as well. So I'm just flipping them over and I'm just going to trace around. Actually, I'm just going to use the knife straight up, but of course you can trace around it and then cut it out with some scissors. Once your scrapbook paper is all cut out, again, we're going to be using our tacky glue and applying it all over to the surface. And just the same as we did for the house panels, I am going to be using a craft stick to smooth it out, and then my finger just to fill in any of those spots that I missed. Again, apply the paper on and then apply some weight to it until it is dry. All right, so on to something really, really cool. Dollar Tree has these corrugated tin plaques, and I removed the hanger from them. And then next, I have got 3 different colors of paint. I have got black, burnt umber, and burnt sienna. I'm going to use a rag and I'm applying some black all over the surface. And as you can see, I'm just dabbing it on just randomly. And my rag is kind of crinkled up a bit just to create some texture. So I'm just going to dab it all over and then I'm going to allow it to dry. Next, I'm using my burnt umber. Again, same thing, I'm applying it just randomly all over the surface, and I'm just making sure that I'm still seeing the tin and I'm still seeing the black paint. And I am focusing on some corners a little more, or a few spots here and there a little more than others. And again, you'll want to allow that to dry. And now I'm using the burnt sienna. So I'm adding less and less, and I'm focusing more and more on specific spots, just like you would see on an actual tin roof that's rusted. It's kind of blotchy and all over the place, and that is kind of the look that I'm trying to recreate. So you can see the difference between the two panels here, and I'm impressed so far, but this next technique again was suggested by a viewer. I'm using some matte decoupage glue and I'm just applying it here and there, focusing on those heavily painted areas. And then I'm going to sprinkle some cinnamon. Now I have to say, this just took it to the next level. I was amazed at how well this turned out. So I'm just working in sections and then I will remove some, go back in with some glue and cinnamon again until I get a look that I like. So I do have a video on how you can rust tin with like actual rust, but I discovered that it doesn't work on all tin pieces that I have bought from Dollar Tree. So this is a great alternative, especially if you don't feel like the waiting process of allowing something to rust. I'm going to have that video linked down below for you in case you do decide that you want to try it out. So I removed the excess, just tapped it off, and then I went in with a rag, and again I just removed a bit more, and you can see how amazing this is. Now I did decide to go in and seal it up with some matte sealer. I didn't want the cinnamon to slowly rub off, so I thought this was a great option to seal it. All right, so while those are all drying, I am now going to focus on these peaks. As you can see, the colors didn't match up. So I'm using my antique white, and I'm going to be giving them a coat of paint, and I will allow those to dry as well. I'm using this snowy mesh from Dollar Tree. It comes in other colors. If you can't get this, burlap would be a great option, or you can use some tulle, whatever you can find. And we are going to be covering the windows as well as the door. So I'm just cutting some pieces down to size for the door and the windows. Once you have your pieces all cut out, I'm going to be applying this with some hot glue. So I just run a bead, and then I'm using this silicone brush. This was a tip from Holly at Humble Pie. Thank you for that tip, Holly. It works really, really well. I'm just adding this in sections and then smoothing it out with that silicone brush. So our windows are all filled in, and now I'm going to trim the window frames out using these sticks that I had foraged. If you don't have any sticks, you can definitely reuse all those wood embellishments that we popped off from earlier if you still have them. And then you might also need a few extra little craft sticks to frame some of the windows out as well. So I'm just cutting my little branches down to size, and I'm applying them using some hot glue. Now, you can apply these twigs on the inside of the window as well if you wanted to camouflage any of that raw wood, but I didn't want that to shrink up my window sides, the size of the window. So I'm just going to add my twigs to the outside, and then I'm going to be filling in where the raw wood is with a pencil crayon, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I also wanted to show here that I am applying some larger branches around the door just to make that look like a bit more of a statement piece. All the windows and the doors are all trimmed out, and now you can see where the lighter raw wood color is showing through. So I'm just using a brown pencil crayon and I'm just coloring that out. You can use some paint as well, anything that you'd like that you would think would work best for you. So one thing I forgot to show on my last cabin was a chimney. So this time I am showing you how to create a chimney. I'm using these tumbling blocks that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and as you can see, I just line them all up on the back side of my house panel here, and I ended up using 2 layers. Now I'm going to be gluing 4 blocks together to create one set, and I will be doing that for all of the pieces going all the way up. One thing you'll want to make sure you do is that you make sure everything stays all lined up and even with each other. So I just push them all together until I can feel that everything is even. Once you've got all your sets of 4 glued together, then you can glue those sets all together to create one long block. Now I am going to be covering this with this distressed brick scrapbook paper that I had bought from Michael's. It was several years ago. I'm going to be wrapping it up with this. Now, if you don't have this brick pattern, then definitely dig around to see what you can find, or go to your craft store to see what you can find that you like. You might even be able to put some rocks on it. So you can see I'm using my tacky glue, and I'm working in sections, and I'm going to apply that and then press it down into the scrapbook paper. Just allow it to set up a bit, and then I'm going to continue to work each of the different sides. There is one side that I don't end up completely covering, so I'll show you that here in a minute, but just continue to work. I end up trimming the paper a little bit just to help me fold the paper around a bit better. You can see that right here. I take my scissors and just cut right up against the edge. So I'm only going to need a few inches at the top that actually needs paper. The rest of it won't need paper on the back side of our chimney. So as you can see, I laid it down, trimmed it off, and then I rolled it back up and I trimmed it off again. And that left a little bit of a flap for me to wrap the top. So that will be the top of our chimney. I'm applying some glue again, and I'll be finishing that off. Now, you could wrap the whole thing if you'd like, but I don't know, I just wanted the raw wood to be sitting up against the back of the house. I just figured that it might have better adhesion. I'm not sure, but I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do it that way. But of course, feel free to do it however you would like. All right, so I wanted to distress this, so I'm using this frayed burlap distress oxide ink, and I'm using just a sponge and I'm applying it all over the surface. I allowed that to dry, and next I'm adding some pebbles just to the top and the base of the chimney. Now, I used hot glue, but I discovered that there was a little bit of like a chalky substance on these rocks, so I ended up going back in a little later and adding a bit of silicone and hot glue to these rocks, just to really help them hold together. So it's just going to be kind of like a puzzle. You'll just have to play around with the rocks that you have to see how they all fit together. So I'm just checking to make sure that I have left enough room to apply some rocks all the way around the top, because you will be seeing the top of the chimney from every direction of our cabin. So now I just finished that off, and I added some to the bottom as well. You just want to make sure you don't add any rocks to the back side on the bottom. Otherwise, it's not going to sit flush up against your cabin. So now, just to match up the grunginess of the rest of the chimney, I'm adding the frayed burlap distress oxide using a stiff bristle brush on the rocks and then on the inside of our chimney as well at the top. I'm going to set that aside and allow it to dry. All right, so our panels are all nice and dry and ready to go. We are going to start to assemble our cabin. I'm using these tumbling blocks as braces. I'm just figuring out where I need to place those tumbling blocks. So I'm just going to put them down, make sure that they're not going to be in the way of our little window. And then I'm going to start to glue those pieces down. So I did end up discovering that I needed to trim down these side panels. I will show you in a bit here what I did, but at this point that you can trim it off before you add all these pieces, but I'll show you that if you make the mistake like I did, then you do have an option. So I'm just making sure all my wood pieces are in place properly, and I'm adding extra glue for bracing. And then I'm going to be using a combination of tacky glue and hot glue. You just want to make sure you have all your tumbling blocks in the right spots. So again, you don't have them sticking out in your window. So I'm adding a bead of the tacky glue right along the edge, and then I'm adding hot glue onto our tumbling blocks. Once you add the hot glue, you will need to work quickly to apply it to the wood panel. You just want to make sure everything's lined up properly and then press it to make sure everything is nice and straight. I'm adding more hot glue just for some extra bracing. If at any time any of these instructions are confusing, you can slow down the speed of your videos, so just keep that in mind, and then you can watch this at a slower pace. So I'm doing the same thing for the other panel, and then I will be doing the same for the back panel as well. So here you can see that the nozzle of my tacky glue is thin enough to get underneath that one panel there, as well as my hot glue gun. Again, you need to work quickly to put this into place. Just make sure you have it all even so that your house isn't all distorted. All right, so everything is all set up. Now I'm adding an extra brace at the roof. This is a square dowel that I picked up from Dollar Tree, but you can use a regular dowel or whatever you have in your stash. I just measured it and now I'm just cutting it down to size. Next, I'm going to be using some hot glue to put it into place. As you can see, I am putting it into place so that the edge is facing up, so it looks a bit more like a diamond. And there is a reason for that. So you do have a few moments of some wiggle room to make sure that this is nice and straight. And then once that glue is set, you can now get out those roof pieces. So typically a tin roof will go the long way down, but my tin did not fit properly. So I am going to have the ripples go downwards. So as you can see, my side panels here, they are a little bit too tall. So I have to go in and trim it down a little bit. So I'm just measuring out how much I need to trim. And then I use a craft knife and a ruler, and I'm pressing down hard to cut through the paper and some of the wood fibers. And then I'm going to be using a tool and I'm going to slowly start to break that. This actually worked quite well. I was pressing really hard and this piece held together beautifully. So I just continued to work on this until I was able to snap off that top ledge. Now, if I thought I had measured everything properly, but I didn't. So if you find that you have that, maybe try to trim it off before you apply all the pieces together. But just so you know, you do have that option like I just showed you. All right, so now to apply my tin, but first I needed just a few extra pieces of supports. I wanted really good adhesion for my roof peak as well. So I'm adding 3 tumbling blocks on both sides of my roof peak support. And now I know I'm going to have really good support for my roof. The side edge sits really nicely in one of those little grooves on our tin roof. So I am applying this using some Gorilla silicone adhesive. This stuff works really, really well. I really like it. But one thing I should have done and I didn't was to use an additional bit of hot glue while this was setting. I do end up adding some, but I should have at this point and I didn't. So that's a little tip for you. Honestly, this has been a project where you kind of figure things out along the way. And I was trying to do things a little bit differently from my last one. So this was a bit of a trial and error. So here you can see I'm adding the hot glue now just under the roof line, right where they meet the side panel. I'm allowing the hot glue to set. And now I'm going to do the same for the other side. You're not even going to see that hot glue, so if it's a bit messy, that's all right. I did end up going in and smoothing it out with my finger a little bit. My glue gun is a lower temp, so I did not burn my finger, so just be aware of that. All right, so everything's starting to set up. Now I'm just going in and adding more hot glue here and there, just again to help support that roof and to prevent it from like falling apart. I'm amazed at how well this hot glue is actually holding to that tin. Okay, so you can see there's a little bit of a gap, but I do have a way to solve that. And we are going to first off apply these snowy wood peaks. So I need to figure out where I need to put the glue. So I'm just lining things up. You can see it's a little bit higher than it was originally placed. I'm going to flip our house upside down and then take a pencil and just outline where I'm going to have my house and snowy peak attach. So now I know where I need to place my glue, so I'm just going to use hot glue to adhere this to the surface of our house on the roof peak. I need to do the same for the back side of our cabin, but don't forget, we need to add our chimney. So I'm going to just figure out again where I need to attach the glue first, and now bring in my chimney, and now I'm going to measure out how much I need to cut away to accommodate for our chimney. You don't want to glue your chimney over top of your roof peak. It's not going to lay flat against the back of your cabin. So I just drew a line where I need to cut away the roof peak, and I just used scissors to cut that. And I'm just going to measure to see how I did here. I need to trim a little bit to the right. And then I will be using, again, my hot glue to adhere all the pieces together. So I went ahead and I am gluing my roof peaks down first, but you can totally glue the chimney into place first if you'd prefer. You can see here I needed just to trim a little bit more away, but this actually worked fine for me. And so I just added both of those roof pieces, and now I'm gluing down my chimney. And you just want to make sure everything is flush, including the bottom, because we need that to sit on the surface flat. All right, so you could see that I still had a bit of a gap, so I'm using moss to fill that all in. Traditionally, you'll see in the forest that cabins in the woods have got moss growing on them, and the moss will be growing on like the wood fascia, not on the tin roof. So I thought, well, this would work really well to hide that gap. Now you could trim your pieces all down so they all fit together perfectly, and then you wouldn't have this gap, but I'm just trying to make it easy for all of you. And this was something I had planned on doing anyways, was add some moss. So I thought this worked perfectly. Okay, so this is one step I forgot again to do earlier, and that is to hide that little piece of paneling there. So I'm going to go back in and add some scrapbook paper to cover that up, but you could use some paint as well. I'm just using some decoupage glue for this one. I didn't bother to use the tacky glue this time around. It was just a small area, so I knew that it wouldn't bubble up or anything on me. So here I am, just applying that scrapbook paper into place. I'll allow it to dry. And now I'm going to go in and cut it out with a craft knife. I admit this was a little awkward, so I wish I would have done this beforehand. But like I said, this is kind of like trial and error for me. I was trying to figure out how best to do this for all of you. And I'm just sharing some of the errors that I made along the way. But I have to say, I am actually pretty impressed. I'm really happy with this. So I'm just going in and adding just a little bit of paint here and there, just to kind of cover up any ripped parts of the paper. That's where one of the rocks lifted, and I went in and added some silicone adhesive to put it back into place. All right, I wasn't happy with the snowy peak, so I decided to grunge it up a bit to make it almost look like, you know, when a fireplace releases soot and it kind of settles in on the snow. It makes it look kind of dirty and old. Well, that's the look I decided to create for this. And to cover up that hole, I used a snowflake. And then my daughter suggested, she's like, Mom, why don't you have the moss kind of draping over the edge? I'm like, actually, yeah, I kind of like that look. So I did that, and I'm really happy with that. I think it doesn't look so like sharp of an edge now. It really softened that roof line. Here I am adding some moss just at the bottom of the cabin as well. You can add some trees, that would be really nice as well. And now I'm just adding the last detail, and that is our little puff of smoke coming out of our chimney. If you have any questions or even some suggestions, please leave them down in the comments section. I am loving this cabin. It turned out beautiful. That tin roof Wow, I am blown away at how well it turned out, and I think it is perfect for this cabin. This cabin could be used year-round. You could definitely just change it up a little bit. I added a little touch of snow on it. You don't have to use the snowy mesh if you don't want. I just hope that this was a more achievable cabin for you to create. And here it is, all lit up as if we lit the fireplace inside. I would absolutely love to know what you think of the cabin as well as our rustic Victorian village by leaving me a comment down below. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today. Here's some more inspiration for you to check out. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.